Hello, everybody. Glass Half Dead here, the #1 kill team channel on YouTube, unless, of course, you are aware of any other kill team channel on YouTube. But today, I'm actually joined by someone that people tell me actually knows how to play the game, unlike myself, Sam. Hi, Sam. How's it going?
Hi. How you doing, Glass?
As always, I am living life to the fullest, and I'm staying well hydrated. My drink of choice is pure H2O, obviously. How about you? How are you doing?
Doing great. I just roll out of bed and I'm here to talk about some kill team, some Death Korps of Krieg, or Vet Guard as I like to call them, because I hate Death Korps of Krieg.
Let's be clear. You are officially a good player. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I would be happy to say that. You won LVO with Warp Coven. Yep. Now, my own personal bias, I'm not that impressed. I'm like, Warp Coven?
I wasn't that impressed either.
Like, I've beaten. I could probably win a game if I'd. Well, I mean, not LVO, but I could win a game, and until now, never before happened. But then, so obviously because of that, I knew your name, and then I saw something I actually found interesting, which I think hasn't really come up that often in Kill Team in 3rd edition so far, which is a team that I did not expect to see win a big tournament, won a tournament. And it was Vet Guard. And then I was like, oh, that's the guy that won with Warp Coven. And to me, winning with a team that I don't expect to see up there is so much more interesting. And so then, here we are. Thank you so much for coming on, Sammy. Do you have any things you'd like to plug, which I should have asked at the start, by the way, or anything, anywhere we can find your socials or anything like that?
Yeah, actually, I have no socials, believe it or not. I'm just a guy. I just hang out. I play Kill Team. I'm here to have fun and hang out. But if you're in the Sacramento area, that's where my club is located at. We're called Cadia Fight Club. I wear the jersey just for that.
Nice.
It started by my friends Shay and John. And then I've come in and been the third TO, but they started it up a couple years back, and I've had a great time. So if you're in the Sacramento area, which is in California, if you guys didn't know, come by Thursdays and Fridays, or come join our Discord. You can find us in the Command Point Discord, or even Glass's Discord. You can just DM me. I'll give you guys an invite. We always love to have new players or experienced players. We don't really care. We're just here to have fun and hang out and throw some dice. That's why I played this game in the first place, honestly.
Go to the Cadia Fight Club, where Sammy will play a very boring Vet Guard game into you.
No, I promise you I'll be playing Wrecker Crew. Like, if I had a choice of teams, I could just play every game and be Wrecker Crew.
Nice. It's now time for you to impart your wisdom. Let us imagine, I will play the role. To be clear, play the role. This isn't true, but I will imagine that I am not a good player, and that I want you to teach me, someone that doesn't know anything about Vet Guard, how to play Vet Guard. What do I do? What the hell's going on? I've got no clue. You know what? Let's start with the most basic question, actually. Is it a 10-man team?
No, it's a 13-man team.
I am shook. Okay. But you say 13 instead of 14. Break it down.
So the reason you take 13 currently is because they have a faction ability that says if they leave one trooper behind, they get a free strategic ploy. The strategic ploy, or sorry, I should say ploy. It could be any ploy. It could be your tactical ploys or your strategic ploys. The ones that you choose currently the only one you choose is, I think, called Siege Warfare. It's the only one that gives your team the lethality it needs to actually be a team. Otherwise, they are just mediocre and you should not play them. It gives you Accurate 1 and Saturate. Accurate 1 is you retain a dice. Saturate means they have no cover when you shoot them. So
sure.
Comes up quite a bit. It's probably what you pop every turn. It gives you TP1 lethality all the way to TP4, and that pairs well with all of your guys. So it doesn't matter who's shooting who, but you'll always have at least one hit, and that's huge because then you have the secondary ability, their faction ability, which is called Take Aim, which comes from their leader saying, hey, shoot better, and they shoot better, and then they have Ceaseless. So, yep, start there.
Okay, so 13-man team, because essentially I'm swapping one warrior, that's what the normal dude is called, for 4 VP, because I'm going to have the thing turned on the whole time. Awesome.
Yep.
Now, when I'm looking at their roster, cool, 13 dudes, there's a lot of specialists. What am I taking? What am I not taking? Because that confuses me.
So you're going to be taking some choices that maybe other Vet Guard players or Death Korps players will not agree with in my list. So let me just start with the ones that you would be taking. Let me actually pull it up so I make sure I get their names right. I wish I could say I remember them off the top of my head, but I don't.
You can call them by their weapon if you want. I don't care about the real names because I don't know the real names. Sorry.
All right, I have it up. So you're going to be taking the Death Korps Watchmaster, who's your leader. He's going to have a chain. He's going to have a plasma pistol and a power weapon. Don't ask why, just do it. 3 troopers, because like we just said, you have to drop a trooper / warrior for the CP, for the free ploy. There we go. And now we're gonna get to the selections where you're always going to bring, no matter what. It's not an opinion. You just bring these guys. You're gonna bring a gunner with a bayonet and a grenade launcher, a gunner with a melter gun, a gunner with a melter gun, gunner with a plasma gun. You're going to bring the spotter. You're going to bring the confidant. Typically, he's going to go with a bolt gun, but you could do a chainsword. He's like the only really flex pick. And you're going to bring the Vox operator. So to go through them, the spotter is a guy that's going to spot a guy. He's going to say, hey, look, you shoot him. If he's in light cover, you can freely shoot him. It's great. Perfect. He also has a 4 attack, I think, hitting on 4s, 3/5 blast 2 silent gun.
Yep.
He's great. He can be anywhere you want. Vox operator, because you want to give out APL. And he's the only one that we call can relay orders, quote unquote. And we'll talk about that later.
Okay.
And then you bring the gunners I just listed because they're the best guns you have. I mean, there's just nothing else to say. And now we're gonna talk about the controversial picks.
Okay.
So
to clarify, you didn't include the sniper there in that pick of gunners, right? Okay, keep going. Cool. Cool.
We'll talk about the sniper.
Yeah.
He is unfortunately big bait right now.
Okay.
So we'll start with in alphabetical order. We'll start with the bruiser. I bring the bruiser. The bruiser to me is a really important piece in your toolkit, strictly because this team has really bad melee. I'm not a fan of hand axes. I know some people are, and we'll talk about the data slate later, and some people are going to be like, oh yeah, you should bring those things. I still don't think it's worth the equipment slot, so the bruiser comes in strictly on the fact that he has one of the more niche abilities that people don't think about is he has a just a scratch for normals and melee. He basically can take up to, from his 7 wounds, he can take up to 11 points of damage because he can ignore a normal. Melee weapons typically do 4 damage, at least the things he's fighting. So he's taking up to 1 hit, and then he can deal at least a minimum of 9 damage in return if he gets 3 hits. And he has a 4 attack. It's a 4 attack weapon on hits on 3s. It's 3/3, has, I think, shock. He is just one of those guys you're going to put out in front, and he's going to help you zone, which we'll talk about later in strategy. It's really an important aspect of the team, but he's needed. I know people don't like him because they're like, well, when will I ever run up and smack someone with a guy, right? It's never going to happen. Well, we'll get there, but bring the bruiser. You need him. You also then always bring the medic. The medic is, depending, I should say, the medic is one of those choices where like 99% of the time you'll be bringing into shooting teams. He's better than a lot of the other options we'll be listing out. And he also has the pure fact that he can keep alive your plasma or your melta if you move him up forward, stuff like that. I really like the medic. I think in this edition, he is definitely a must pick because we'll talk about the rest of them. They're not great. I'm going to leave the most controversial one, the sapper. We'll come back to him. Okay. A lot of things to say about him. We'll talk about the sniper. The sniper is really bad. If you're a new player, I highly recommend you just leave him at home. I really liked the sniper last edition. He was my favorite model. He has been gutted. This poor man has been his organs have been taken from him for the Emperor. He only has heavy on his gun now. He cannot dash anymore. He also only has 1 concealed shot. It's not good. I really would like to make him work. I have tried a lot, but unless he's paired with a spotter who still needs to pair with one of the other gunners if you're shooting from a long range, he's just not worth it. And also, I ran the calc. He barely kills a Space Marine, even when they're at 10 wounds. So without the AP, he's just not good.
Okay.
He really needs a buff. If they gave him AP1, I think he'd actually be viable. Right now, he's just a sad man. Or some kind of ability. I don't know. Then we'll talk about the one that a lot of people like to take is the Zealot. So the Zealot has this weird thing where if you're within 3 of him, you get Severe. And if people don't know what Severe is if you don't roll a crit, you get a crit. It's fine. People like to say that they can pair them with the gunners in the backline within a 3-inch radius and shoot. The way that I've played the game and the way I've seen the game, I don't ever see that really happening often, where I can have a guy sitting there doing absolutely nothing but providing a 3-inch aura. It just doesn't mesh with my playstyle ever. I also think he on average does less than every other operative just in the team. So I leave him at home because I'll go back to my very controversial pick, the Sapper.
Yeah.
This guy used to be the best unit in the game, like probably top 5 in the last edition. And now when you compare him to this 3rd edition, he sucks. He just does. He's nowhere near as good. He nowhere as near as lethal because they gutted a lot of his ability to do that kind of stuff. He's just overall really sad from what he was. But I think he's one of the few pieces in your kit as a Death Korps player where you actually need to bring him because it's his idea of a threat is so much higher than the Zealot or any of the other options that he's basically the last pick you always bring, because you put a mine down where then on ITD or in the open you have at all time the option to blow up person going onto your home point or the midpoint, and he basically dissuades people's game plans, which I don't think a lot of people talk about in Kill Team. Is like your plan is only as good as if it survives the enemy, and he does not allow your opponent to properly plan, because you're the one that dictates where the mine is, you dictate how it's going to blow up, stuff like that. And the argument against that is people say, oh, he dies too quickly, I can never keep him alive. Well, we'll talk about that. We can keep him alive very well. We have a lot of ploys, a lot of abilities, a lot of equipment that keeps him alive. He can basically run up. I think he has a 9-inch initial... No, he has a 10-inch initial run range where he can run up, throw down a mine. He has a 3-inch back, and then you have an ability called Regroup that can pull him back even further. That's how I've used him, and I think that's the reason this team does really well into elites and other stuff like that, because it sort of makes them second guess their decision making. So yeah, those are the choices if you're new. I think you just start off with that and go from there.
So just off the top of my head, maybe I missed it, but I think the only guy you didn't mention was the veteran. A quick aside while I've got you here, sorry everybody. What is the number one key to playing Kill Team, playing with other people? That normally means you're going to have to go places. So how about an all-in-one box? Look, I've even got my Vet Guard magnetized on the side, and the guy will even do your own custom logo for you. If you want to know more about this, I have a video that I'm linking up here in one of the corners, whatever. I've gone over this, plus a bunch of other favorite equipment that I like to have for my day-to-day, my daily driver in Kill Team. Go check that out.
I have a love-hate relationship with the veteran. I think the veteran, if he had 4 attacks, he's like a must-bring over the bruiser. Because his so people don't know, the veteran is a guy that has a bionic arm, but it's 3 attacks sitting on 4 is 45. And that stat line seems really appealing unless you know how melee math works, and on 3 attacks, sometimes you're not going to get that 3rd attack, and you are going to die on the charge. So...
Dare I ask, has the new buff changed that? Because you played before the data slate that we just got, and the new data slate just gave them a new thing. Any change?
Yep, it gives them severe. I think that there is a world where you could bring the veteran. It's just he's probably only coming in on the rare case over the medic. Oh, I forgot about the flamer. But there are some times when he could fit over the bruiser or even maybe over the medic, but he's just not good enough in my opinion. I have been trying to make him work because I really like the veteran. It's just in the past he had a feel no pain of 5+. If people doesn't know, that's when you roll a dice for each damage, and if you get a 5+, he doesn't take it. That doesn't happen anymore. They reworded it and reworked it into this new edition, and now Bionics is his new ability. He just takes normal damage of 3 or more. It takes 1 less. It's just not good on a 7 wound body. It would be great if he had more health somehow, or if you could buff him somehow. It's not good. Because on average, a power sword still kills him, which is what I typically run as a baseline of what he runs into, or a chainsword minimally. Even a chainsword he dies to, because it removes it to 4-5 to 3-4. So he's still dying in 2 hits anyways if they get 1 crit. I don't like him. I just don't. I really want to in my heart of hearts, because I used him all the time. He was like, yeah, this is my guy, but just like the sniper, he's just not like his former self. So it's okay.
And the flamer, since you mentioned
the flamer, I've got to mention, he's the guy that you sub in for the medic most of the time if you want the extra gunner and you're facing a full melee team, because he has torrent too. So you can move him up pretty aggressively and threaten, a sort of a semi sort of blast idea with the torrent, because they fixed torrent in this edition. Yeah. So if you're facing a full melee team and you're like, well, when will I ever get shot? They're not going to shoot me. You sub out the medic, you bring in the flamer. That's typically what I do. Just because the threat of hitting 2 guys with a 4 attack hitting on 2-3-3 gun is pretty scary for a lot of teams. Taking 6 or 9 damage is not something you want to be doing, especially because you can threaten with the flamer TP1, and we'll get there. But flamer over the medic, but that's the only time. Otherwise, he stays there on the bench. He's just not that good either.
So we're at the table, and we've just listened over and over again to that segment. We have our roster. We know what we're taking. Step 2, I have to pick a Tac Op. What am I running?
Pray for Seize Ground.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
So you say pray for Seize Ground. I assume that what you're saying here ground. Is that take ground. So take ground is you are hoping that the particular deployment you're playing on, there is a stronghold that goes over the center line.
Or on ITD, you have the option to have the doors there on the center line that you can choose. So to explain why, Vet Guard only has 2 options. They have the security and seek and destroy archetype. They can only choose from those 2 archetypes, and within those archetypes is a Tac Op called Take Ground. It is almost 99% bright almost all the time, because it is the only good Tac Op they have where they are proactive enough to do it. So all the other ones, Central Control, what's the other one called? Contain. Storm Objective, Champion, Overrun. Those are the other 5 Tac Ops. And now they going in order of where you would take them. You would take Seize Ground if possible. You would take Contain or Storm Objectives, and then everything else is bad.
Okay.
That's what I've come to decision. I think there's like the 3rd slot is Champion on the off chance you can really make it happen. But it is really difficult to say that maybe Champion into like elite players. I could see a world where your Melta Gunner can do it, but then your Melta Gunner is the only feasible option most of the time for anyone killing a Marine.
And once he's
so you're only really going to get
it's
going to be harder. So to speak on a little bit on why, the rest of the ones besides Seize Ground, you can't dictate what your opponent is going to do. So if your opponent plays really aggressive, Contain is really hard to do. Maybe your opponent doesn't like to step on the objective, so now you can't really do it unless you go into their wholly within their territory to step on their objective to get a point. Central Control, they can still stop that by moving someone onto it. You might be like, well, what about Seize Ground? Well, we'll get to Take Ground. We'll get to Take Ground. It's a lot easier. What's the other one? Champion, like we just said, your Melta Gunner is the only one that can do it. And then Overrun is just bad for this team. Just don't take it. That's unfortunate, but it's really hard to do being in their territory with a 7 wound model. They're not going to live, so they're not going to get that second point ever. And then you take Ground because, like Glass was saying, you have two things. what they're called, strongholds. That's right, strongholds.
Yeah.
And basically you can score off either one. And a lot of the Volcus GW maps have both strongholds in both territories. So you can control one stronghold and score 2 points, or you can destroy the other stronghold and control 2 points, and your opponent cannot spread as far as you because you have more models. So you're able to dictate that better than your opponent most of the time. If they try to meet you both on, both strongholds, they know you're playing it, it's going to be much harder for them to do that because at 13 models, you have a ton of options to kill them for where they can kill you. So, take ground is number one de facto thing you can do. If you can't, if you can't, you take storm objectives and contain and just really pray. That's like the only option. And that's why I think Vet Guard are not the best Tac Ops. So like, if you want to play another team, I don't blame you. Like, they're good at killing stuff, but that's about it.
Okay. So again, you would only do take ground on Volcus or Into the Dark when you have the option of getting into the stronghold that is over the center line, but you still have most of it in your half, right?
Yep.
If you don't have that, don't take it. So if the stronghold is entirely in the enemy's half, you're saying pick something else.
Yep. Which is contain or store objectives and just pray.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so I'm taking take ground or possibly contain, possibly storm objectives. If I'm taking storm objectives, you're either, I assume, due to what very little I know from Vet Guard, I'm not really pushing to get their objective. I'm trying to hold mine and center, or is that flexible for you? Do you push when you can?
We can do a little bit of both.
Okay.
We're getting a little ahead of ourselves on this topic, but
sure.
The reason you can do both is because you can take something called chronometer, and we'll talk about what that does for your game plan. But yeah, storm objectives is sort of like either or if you want to play, there's a strategy where you don't even touch your own home objective, and you sort of try to bait them into theirs, and then you can take it back because that's how storm objectives works. As long as they're controlling an objective, you can get it back. So there's a little play there. But yeah, we'll talk about that in a second.
Okay, so we then get to deployment, and I think this is probably where a lot of people, aka myself, the average Joe, would be confused, because we've picked our models and they're all so weak. And I know that we've got auras, we've got medics, we've got spotters, we've got the auras from our comms and from our leader and from our confidant. Where does everything go? I'm lost. What do I do?
My general game plan for anyone that's learning Horde, and you can take this advice to all teams, I highly recommend that you think of it this way. You start with the operatives that don't matter. So you were going to start with the Vox operator. You're going to start with stuff like
Isn't he like the most important dude? He gives orders.
No. That's the Watchmaster. The Vox operator is the guy that gives APL. And he is important, but you can sort of place him in the middle. That's my best advice. Place the Vox operator sort of in the middle of the board of your deployment so that he can move 6 inches to one side or 6 inches to the other side and give APL. And then just keep your Watchmaster, which is your leader, within 6 of him, and you're going to be fine. The next couple of guys you're going to place are maybe going to be like the Bruiser, the Medic, stuff like that. And you're going to have an idea for where they're going to go for that initial turn. So you're going to be like, the Bruiser is going here, TP1. And that could be an objective. That could be a location. That could be anywhere you'd like. Just have a general idea of where he's going to end for TP1. And so this is what I would recommend a lot of new Horde players do. You're going to look at the board before you set up deployment and just take 5 minutes to like sort of mind's eye where each model is going to end up. And once you do this quite a bit, you'll get better at it. When you initially start this idea, you're going to be like, well, I need like 30 minutes, Sammy. What else? I can't do this in like 5 minutes like you. Yes, that's totally fine. I still take up sometimes to 15 minutes, even 20 minutes. And that's why I get always the stink eye from my TOs. They're like,
get him on the clock.
Up, like, move it along. And it's like, I'm thinking, right? So, just take your time. If you need to do this, like, alone, you could just look at the map on like if you have Volcus or something like that, just set it up, try to just sort of mind's eye that first initial turn, because that's what's going to speed up your deployment, and that's how you're going to know like who's my important guy, what's not. And then the second rule is, usually I would just say, because it's simplest, just keep your gunners. It doesn't matter if you have initiative or not, just keep your gunners as your last group to set up. So that's going to be your grenade launcher, your melta gunner, the medic. The melta gunner, the grenade launcher, the plasma gun, and probably maybe your watchmaster if you haven't deployed him, or you could maybe make that the spotter. It doesn't matter. Just my point is, you want to keep your highest level threats back because you don't want your opponent knowing when they're going to deploy, and then you also have more information to when to deploy them. Stuff like that, and that goes for all horde teams. That goes for like the blooded, the Kroots, all that stuff. So you just want to keep that information hidden as much as possible and then when you deploy them, you just have the best possible outcome for that thing. It also helps sort of like when you see sort of where the threats are on the other side, it sort of helps be like, okay, my melta gunner can go here because on that side they have only melee threats, and then blah blah blah, stuff like that. So that's my best advice is to just mind's eye it, take some time to initially think about where everyone's going to go, and then try to keep as many threats, your big threats, back so your opponent can't deploy optimally and stuff like that, and just go from there. It's going to just take time. I think the best advice when you're initially playing this team is that nothing is going to be easier. Your opponent's going to be playing elites, and he's going to smack 2 guys down, and you're going to be like, I'm still thinking about my 5th guy. Where does he go? Just be okay with that. That's just how the game goes, because what you have in the game is a lot more power. You have a lot more power in some more obscure concepts. So that is my best advice. There's really no shortcut besides those, because it takes a lot of time. So
very quickly, I want to ask about auras and reactiveness. So auras. So for example, the medic. You've taken him because he keeps somebody alive because he has an aura where he keeps somebody alive. The Vox operator does have relay orders where you are, if you want to, you can do that or not. How am I factoring, specifically with Vetguard, I am asking here, where do I want the medic to be? Where do I want my auras to sit? What am I really thinking about for that big first activation of turn 2 play sort of thing?
So for the medic, the general rule is you want to keep him near your gunners who are going to shoot. So that's going to be like the plasma gunner or the grenade launcher or people that are going to shoot far range, and he can revive them because they're going to be shooting far back. Sometimes the medic is just there for me. Sometimes he's just there to be a body to get onto a point. Sometimes too. I would say that the medic is important, but you actually have some wiggle room, and we'll talk about it in the ploys with regroup, where you can sort of shift him to locations where you sort of need him to be. So the initial idea is you just keep him near someone that shoots long range, and he's typically the best guy that shoots. So it's a plasma gunner. The second thing of this aura is the Watchmaster, and I didn't talk about him, but the Watchmaster's aura is you have an faction ability called Orders or something like that, where it radiates from the Watchmaster within 6 inches of him, and everyone within that 6 inches will get that aura of whatever it is. It's called Move and Move, Take Aim. I think there's another one that's like a melee focus
and
one.
Fix bayonets. Yeah.
There we go. And they all are decent. The ones you usually would be taking are Move, 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 and Take Aim. Typically Move and Move for the first turn, and then Take Aim for the 2 through 4. So to speak on that a little bit, when you deploy your Watchmaster, you just sort of want to keep him near as many guys as possible that are going to need the initial extra 1 inch. Or you can just, what I sometimes do when I was learning is I just made sure he was within 6 inches of the Vox operator, because the Vox operator has an ability where if he gets an order, he can choose to lose an APL for his turn and relay that order to everyone, and everyone will get that order no matter what, no matter if they're within the 6 inches or not. So you can do that, where especially when you're learning, just do that and just go from there.
And then I suppose the other auras are, of course, the spotter. I assume that's basically the same as the medic. Just have him near your gunners and then figure it out when you'll go for your shot. And maybe there's another aura, but you know what? What does the Confidant do? I've got no clue.
Oh, the Confidant. He's cool because he can what we call group activate with any of your models. So he can choose to go first, and then he chooses to go first, and then the model after him goes after. It's a pretty niche ability. This edition, it used to be a little bit more prevalent in last edition, but this edition, I typically don't use it. He's typically just a bolt gun or a chainsword, and he just is there to shoot. Sometimes it will come up, and if that does, you typically want to like combo him with either your grenade launcher or your plasma gun, because they're typically in the back line shooting from far away. You could even maybe choose to do it with like a trooper if you're going for like some kind of crack play with him. If he has like a chainsword, that's it. Pretty much, okay. Because the other side of it is that if the Watchmaster dies, which if it does, it's really bad. He becomes the Watchmaster, and the orders start relaying from him. But if your Watchmaster is dying, like before TP3, something has gone really wrong, and just don't worry about that too much.
Right, you've already lost. Yeah. A quick one before we move on to like the more specific stuff, deploys, etc. Is just kind of again on that deployment. Upon having a plan, every team is a little bit more or less reactive. So, you know, and depending on your skill in the game. For me, I would follow your stuff to the letter, and it wouldn't matter what my opponent puts down, because I'm so focused on my own rules and not knowing what I do that I'm like, well, I just have to focus on myself. Maybe I'll learn stuff, but in general, how does Vet Guard play? Do they just have a plan and they stick to it, and because they've got so many bodies, it just works? Or is it a more reactive team than Elites, and you have to really know what's going on, and you're going to lose more because you don't know what you're doing, and you have to learn all the ins and outs of everything else to get better? How does Vet Guard stack up there?
Vet Guard is interesting because they are what I would call a zoning team. So in this is a term I've sort of coined for how I play. They are in a weird fashion both proactive and reactive. They're reactive because they have more bodies, so that means you're going to have the last activation, and we can get to that later, but that's a big deal. But they're also proactive because they can hold the threat range or space of a large portion of the map pretty much uncontested for free, because of chronometer. So they are very much a team where you can do both. You can be proactive, you could be reactive, you can sort of plan your game plan to what your opponent is doing. The Sapper is a big part of that game plan too, where he sort of is like holding off a specific area they can't go join in, so that your proactiveness and your reactiveness can be focused on somewhere else. They're a team that can do both, which is very rare in Kill Team. Sometimes there are options where it's like, oh, this might be a really good proactive play, but I could just literally not do it and wait and do it TP2 when it's more favorable for me. That's why I sort of like them, is because they can do both at the same time.
So just to very quickly wrap my head around the concept of a zoning team, I suppose what you mean is, and tell me if I'm wrong, that you would prefer to act defensively. So, for example, I'm sure you're about to tell me how the Sapper works, but you would prefer that the enemy moves and you say, oh, great, now I know where you're going to go. I'm going to do what I need to do now that you've made your action, whereas you're not trying to push forwards because, well, Sapper's a bad choice in this example. Yeah. But then you I don't really push forwards. I zone, as in I have an aura of threat that I can enact within, but I can't push up the board and still have that threat range. And so you consider that zoning? Is that what that is?
Yeah. I mean, because you have so many activations. So in the chance of, like, let's say you're playing an elite player, which is pretty common nowadays, you can, let's say he moves one guy. Okay, great. Now you can move a guy that doesn't matter, which is what we were doing earlier in Mind's Eye. Let's say it's the Bruiser. Okay, the Bruiser, is for fact going to your home objective. He goes there. Okay, then someone else, he does something else. Okay, now you're going to be like, okay, well, I don't really need to use my medic. So you're going to move your medic into the place you dictated. And you sort of do this back and forth for a while until they're like on the last two activations or on the last couple of activations. And then you sort of decide yourself, well, okay, I don't think he's going to give me a shot, so I'm going to go with the Sapper. And so you do all these things. And then now you have your lasting couple of guys, and they're all in threatening positions. You can have your melter gunner at a door from chronometer, stuff like that. Basically, what I would say is sort of happening. You're holding that threat range, and you're wasting activations beforehand. And then now you know where your opponent is at pretty much the entire ending TP1. And now you can decide, hey, I'm going to run my gunner up and shoot him in the face, and he's not going to be retaliate. Or, then you can set your gunners up on Vantage or something like that. Basically, you're just you're in a proactive spot, and because you're in a proactive spot, your opponent can't be proactive against you because you're already holding that area, so they're zoning. And then you're able to be reactive because now you have all these bodies, and you just throw them away for activations, and your opponent has to activate. So I guess that's the best way to describe it.
Okay. With that said, rest of the team. There you go. Tell me what I do. So we're on the board. We've deployed. We've got our turn one plan. What is this team?
So let's start with equipment.
Break it down however you want. Yeah.
Yeah, let's start with equipment. Now that I've been sort of hinting at it. So there's a couple things you're going to be doing when you pick for equipment for this team. These are like always the musts. You must pick chronometer for my play style, and you must pick gas. I forget what it's called. Just know it's called gas. It's like gas, gas bombardment. You're going to pick those two things for sure. Those are almost always in, like, most, I would say, like 99% of the games, you always bring gas, and there's like a very, very, very few chances you don't bring chronometer, and it's on the off chance that it's like a map that you can't move up on, like Into the Dark. Some maps don't allow that. And then the other equipment you're going to bring crack grenades for your troopers, or a frag grenade if you can. A crack and a frag, or a double crack is typically what I bring. I only bring a frag grenade into other horde teams because then they have to be aware of it at all times. And you're either going to bring light barricades, barbed wire, stuff like that, and then you're going to typically, because it's the best option, you're going to pick scouting step 1, and you're going to pick heavy barricade, light barricade, barbed wire, stuff like that again. Because you're wanting to place your equipment in optimal places for where your models can go at the end. So that's your initial equipment. Just do that. I would say that if you're new to this team, just pick chronometer, gas bombardment, crack or frag, crack, and then light barricades. And then for your fifth choice of equipment, just pick a barbed wire or a heavy barricade. And if you don't want either of those, pick stun grenades or smoke grenades. Just pick anything else and you're good. Okay. Now that we've chosen that, we've done that, we're going to go into the game. So this is where this proactive sort of reactive thing I'm talking about comes into play. Chronometer is an equipment that allows your whole team to dash towards your enemy side. So your enemy, enemy deployment. So now all your guys that have started either 3 inches from the board edge or 6 inches from the board edge, they move 3 inches up forward. Basically, what that allows you to do a lot on these Molkus maps and a lot of these ITD maps, it allows you to be in positions where normally, where your opponent would feel safe, they aren't, because now you have a larger threat range from that initial get-go, and because you have an APL giver from the comms guy, and because you've move, your trooper now has, I believe, if you give him an APL, he has 7 inches from move initially. He has 3 inches from a dash, and if he's within 2 of someone, he can throw a crack grenade, right? So that's 12 inches of threat. You are now having, at any time, because of what we just stated earlier, where you can sort of go through, doing the bruiser, the blah, the medic, and all that going down, you now have at all times your opponent thinking, well, crap, I can't move up to X spot because he now has 12 inches of threat on me. But because it's really 15 inches from chronometer, you're basically covering almost the entire board edge. From his board edge to mine, there's almost no place for him to go because I'm quote-unquote threatening / zoning this area, because at any time I can do it because he doesn't know if I'm going to do it or not. So that is what you're doing. You're holding that space, and you're going to move these guys up, and you're just going to hold that space and do all these, meaningless things for a while. And then your opponent is going to go be like, well, I don't want to lose my Space Marine to a 50-50 melta-gunner shot. I don't want that to happen. So if they're playing on open, they're going to just, most of the time, and I think any smart opponent is going to be like, I'm not going to do anything. And typically they take their model and they move to the left and say, I pass, right? Because they're afraid of that melta-gunner that's going to come in. Now, this is where the sapper comes in. I'm going to talk about each model right now, just to make it easy. Yeah. You're going to take the sapper. You're going to look at that objective, that middle objective or your home objective. Either one works. You're going to run him up 7 inches because he has move. Because he has this initial 7 inches plus the 3 inches from chronometer, that's 10 inches. There's no objective in the game that he cannot reach unless there's like a terrain in the way, where he can then throw down the mine from 1 inch for him because it's 11 inches. Then he can cover the entire point typically, or he can cover sort of sections of the point where you'd want him to have. and then he gets a dash back for 3, and he can be in cover. The next turn, in your strategic gambit phase, you're going to play the ploy regroup, and what that is anyone within 5 inches of a model. It doesn't have to be visible, which is a key point, because you can keep a guy behind a wall and just be like, this guy is within 5 of this. You can move the sapper another 3 inches backwards towards that guy. So now that initial 3 inches, or that initial, I guess, turn, he's moved up and fully put down the mine. And now he's not in threat range of anyone because you've moved him back 3 inches from initial dash, 3 inches from the regroup dash, and now he's pretty much safe. I think about 99% of my games, he has never died because then he's just sitting in heavy cover and just sitting there ready with a bomb in his hand. And because of what we said earlier, you still have all those activations, hopefully, because you didn't lose anyone. You can, at any time, if they move on to that center point, click the button. That's pretty much a dead marine because it's a 4 attack hitting on 2, 5, 6 AP1 gun. And he can do it in silent. Just a little quick bit. You can even do this on ITD. And the great thing about ITD, though, is because guard is not restricted, you could do a full reposition after and then just go on guard, and he's holding, and you put him on engage. You can hold that mine the entire time. So anyone that ends on that objective, before they even tap it, you could go explode. It's very strong. Highly recommend.
So we're looking to do that, as the final activation of turn 1. That's our big... Yeah.
That could be your final activation of TP1, or that could be the activation after your opponent has used all his models, right? Okay. So in terms of elites, that's 6 models. You know he has no more gunners. You know he can't do anything. Yeah, and he's perfectly safe. You just want to do that basically when he's safe. You can also sort of do it a little bit more aggressively. It's not always the greatest idea because then your opponent can sort of stage where he's going to land and then come in and stab him. But I would also say that if they do that, I'm more than happy to have that happen because then that means they're probably trading a really good piece where my gunners, like my grenade launcher or my plasma gunner, just have a free shot on to kill a guy. And typically that's good because typically the guy that ran in is like the melee specialist because they're not running in with like a gunner or something. So, that could be on some cases be really good.
The bait.
Yeah, the bait. So, he's basically, in my mind, he's always either trading 1 for 1 or he's holding that large swath of space. And I also want to just reiterate that the Sapper's token is not 1 inch. It's not a control range thing. It's 2 inches from it. So it's a massive mine. It's not just like, oh, this is an inky binky white. This mine is like covering so much space that you can hold just like just a large section. And then this pairs in well with the next turning point, which is going to be, we're going to talk about gas bombardment and stuff like that.
Okay.
But that's what you're going to do with him. And then the gunners and stuff, if you've ever played Kill Team, you're going to sort of know, right? Gunners are going to shoot people that can be shot. You're going to sort of do it like that. And if they can't, just move them into good positions, right? Put them one on the advantage, put another guy into a position maybe next turn for when someone's going to run into that position so you can run up and shoot him, stuff like that. That's basically your initial TP1, is you're just holding that threat range, making sure they're playing really far back. Then if they do or don't move in, you can threaten them with either the trooper with a crack grenade or your multi-gunner, and then you set up into optimal spots. And then now you're playing from here on out. TB2, this is where the game gets a little bit more complicated for you, but it definitely feels good. Oh, and I also want to reiterate, Siege Warfare is the reason this works. So right. Siege Warfare, the reason you can be so threatening is because if you take a crack grenade and throw it in a guy with accurate, it's about 2 hits on average. What typically you can do is you can use a ploy called In Life Shame. In Life Shame gives you all orders. So it's going to give you move. It's going to give you take aim. And now that trooper has a crack grenade with ceaseless and accurate 1. And on most of the time, that's pretty much a dead model because you're gonna roll like 1 hit. You're gonna have 1 hit. You're gonna re-roll the other hits into another 2 hit or another hit, hopefully. So you have 3 hits on average. If they're not an elite model, most of the time those models will die because it's just crack grenades are that good. So keep that in mind. That's why we take Siege Warfare.
You are always taking the accurate. You're never fishing for a crit unless, I guess, that's the only way you can win the game or something, right?
Yeah. You always are taking the accurate because these guys are really bad without the accurate. So you're always going to take the accurate, But
and you're trying your
those are the reasons you're
best to always keep take aim up. Or
yes,
can you explain that a little bit there? Because when you just said there, like, oh, use your in life shame, I was thinking, oh well, I'd never need that because I'd always have take aim up.
Yeah, so
What's up there?
in life shame is great. In life shame is great. I think it's probably your second best ploy after siege warfare. It's because so 1 extra inch of movement, as a lot of people say, makes or break anything.
I would never say
But
it, but sure.
but the 1 extra inch of movement actually gives you so much more ability to be flexible in your positioning because doors take away an inch of movement.
Yeah.
Getting around corner edges takes away an inch of movement. So you want to have that extra inch of movement because that extra inch of movement just allows you to be a little bit more threatening. And and a good opponent is going to be like, hey, so like with the in life shame, how much movement does he have? And you can show him it and stuff like that.
Okay.
And then they're going to know. But at the same time, it's the thought in their head. It's like, oh, at any time, any of these models can have an extra inch of movement. And it's like, how do you handle that from the opponent's side? Because you, hopefully, as the new Death Korps player, you've played a little bit. You have the experience of like, okay, I know what to do here, and this is how it feels. And your opponent's going to be like, I have no fucking clue who's going to come out and kill me, right? Because they're afraid. So yeah,
I've
in life shame is
misunderstood
very
in
good.
that case. So I had assumed that that you always had take aim up. And so then why would you play in life shame? Because you've got your ceaseless already, but you're saying no, the benefit is the extra inch move from in life shame.
Yes.
Okay, interesting.
Yes, from TP2 onward, I should say.
Yeah.
I should be
Okay.
clear. From TP1, you typically are doing move.
Sure.
On the chance that because you just want to try to get in position of places.
Right.
On TP2 through 4, you're using in life shame for that extra inch of movement, and I promise you, it matters a lot. Just trust me on it. It just allows you to be more flexible in spots where you typically aren't, because I don't know why, but the extra inch of movement is just really important for this team,
Sure.
especially for melta gunners or trying to get around corners or trying to get around terrain. It just provides a ton. So keep that in mind. It's your second best ploy.
But of course, if you don't know what we're talking about here, just to be clear, and correct me if I'm wrong, please. If
Yes.
you can get the angle, if you can get to within 2, you don't need the extra inch. It's not like you're using it to
Yes.
get to a place. It's not like it gives you
Yes.
another benefit. Yeah.
No,
Cool.
no, that's it. You're just using it to get to the place because otherwise you have take aim, and you have accurate. So yeah, you're just using it to get to the place. Yeah.
It's not like it gives you
can't
extra
initiative.
move afterwards to run away again. It's just you get there.
No.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's just to get you there. But for your opponent, that should be very scary because, as we've just described, this team can definitely kill some stuff. So
So that all sounds pretty good. What's kind of, is there anything else I need to know? Like, you've got your big players, you've got your big play with the sapper as discussed, you're using him to zone, and then you've explained how we can run away. But everything else is just basic kill team.
Yep.
Shoot with your gunners.
shoot with the gunners.
Melee goes into melee. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the stuff. And then now we're gonna get to the more complicated stuff. This is where that initial turn is just you doing that. It's super simple. It sounds really hard for new players, but I promise you, once you do it, you're gonna get it. Now we're gonna get to the complicated stuff. We're gonna get to the ideas of how do you use gas bombardment, how you use regroup, when do you use clear the line, when do you use all these other sort of niche things. So all the stuff we've described so far, or what I would describe as like the best of the best, cream of the crop. You are always doing this kind of stuff. Now everything from here is very situational. So Krieg on the TP2, you're going to want to look at the board and decide to yourself, do I use gas bombardment here or not? And now, the gas bombardment requires like a whole section on itself because it's very weirdly, I don't know how to describe it. It's such an interesting equipment piece, but it's probably why the team isn't doing great, because it's so difficult to use, but it's really important. So once per battle, during one strategic gambit, you can choose a spot, or it can't be underneath vantage, but you can choose anywhere on the board, and then it drops a marker. Within 3 inches of that marker, everyone loses an APL unless they move out of the marker. The way that gas bombardment is worded, it affects you too. So keep that in mind. The way that you're using this gas bombardment thing is you're using it to zone off spots, again, from your opponent entering that area. It is a really difficult equipment piece to use, and it's going to be really up to you to decide because how to use it, because it's going to be you guessing what your opponent's plan is, right? So if your opponent is playing hordes or they're playing elites, you sort of have an idea. What is that opponent going to do? Is he going to run at me? Is he going to shoot me? Is he trying to do a crack grenade play? Is he trying to do a frag grenade play? And you're going to use gas bombardment to stop them from entering that area, basically. So you're going to ask your opponent, say, hey, what's the threat range of this guy? And he's going to measure it out for you, hopefully, if he's a nice opponent. And we all should be nice, to be clear.
Of course.
He's going to measure that out for you and say, this is where sort of I can land. You're going to take that into account and then decide, is this worth me using gas bombardment in this area so that he can't throw a crack grenade or a frag grenade at X person or for X reason? Maybe it's a door that he's trying to open. Maybe it's a point he's trying to tap. Maybe it's something like that, right? And you're going to weigh all those options out, and then you're going to decide, do I throw gas bombardment on strategic on TP2 or not? And if you don't, if you say, no, I don't need it, then you wait for TP3, and then you do the same exact thing. And that is what gas bombardment is used for. It's used for those areas of places where you know something is going to happen, and you're weighing that option out in your mind, saying, is this good? Is this bad? Do I need to use it? Blah, blah, blah. And I would say it's like one of the most important things of the team. I just don't speak on it a lot because it's a really complicated idea, because it's always going to be different. It's always going to be up to what your opponent has done, and it's always going to be you making that judgment call. So I can't give you advice beyond weigh the options of like what is happening. Do you think it's really important that he doesn't step on that point? Is it really important that he doesn't enter this area? Is it really important that he may kill my melter gunner? This is how I kept my melter gunner alive, is because I'll throw the gas bombardment on the area, and then I'll use we'll talk about regroup in a second. We'll use regroup to pull him back 3 inches, and so anyone that charges him is within that gas can't fight him after, because he's lost an APL and can only charge.
Sure.
So now you can fall back with the melter gunner, and hopefully, you can also give him an APL, then he can shoot again. All that's good. But that's what gas bombardment is used for. You're using it to weigh your options, and stuff like that. And in conjunction with the sapper mine, you have now zoned off, hopefully, on TP2 or TP3, 5 inches of the board in like a sort of a circular area. And for your opponent, it's like basically clogging up so much space with not even including just, typical terrain. Your opponent is just like, I have no idea what you're doing. And this is where the practice comes in, because you've done it so many times, hopefully. You're going to be like, I know how this feels. This is sort of how it generally is. Go from there. I will say that if you are struggling with this team, gas bombardment is probably the answer to your questions, and to raising your win rate. But it's really hard. I'm not going to say that it's like you're going to get this in the first 5 or 10 turns. It's probably one of the most difficult things to like really think about, because it will make or break your game. It has won me and lost me games, strictly on the fact that I misplaced the place and I got hit by a blast, right? Highly recommend just taking your time and being nice to yourself if you fuck it up. Because sometimes you're going to be like, oh, this was a great gas bombardment. And then you're going to realize halfway through the turn, you're going to be like, it didn't do jack shit. This was the worst thing I've ever done. So just keep that in mind. But it's very strong.
So when I had first read it, I had genuinely just thought, oh, well, I'd put it on an objective that I want to take.
Yep.
But then I thought, oh, but then I'm minus APL. I'll take another crack grenade instead. So, okay, so you're saying it's a zoning piece. That obviously makes a lot more sense. You're trying to preempt where the enemy is going to go so that you're creating a safe spot for your operatives. Nice.
Yeah, and it's just because then it's another decision that your opponent is making, that they're not comfortable with and you're comfortable with. And it's not allowing them to move into the positions they want, right?
Sure.
Because let's say they need a move and a dash to get to that one location is going to threaten your home objective. Well, now they can only move, and now they're not going to do that move. So now you're like, aha, I'm safer for another turn, and you go from there.
Very cool.
We're going to talk about regroup real quick. Regroup is your strategic ploy that you do in your turn, where you choose one guy, everyone within 5 of him can then dash towards that model. Keep in mind that this operative cannot be near enemy models. You typically choose one of your backline pieces, and everyone within 5 moves closer to him. This is a really important ploy for what we talked about with the sapper, but it's also really important for when you want to maybe move back a guy that's moved within 2 of an enemy operative and thrown a crack or something, and you want to drag him backwards. Typically, the guy I choose is either the bruiser, because he's usually far off in the board, and he's within 5 inches of pretty much anyone that's already moved up to do a threatening play. He can typically pull back a guy because he's. I usually think about that for aura, what we were talking about earlier, or it's the medic, or it's someone that I know doesn't like their positioning doesn't super matter for TP2, right? They're just sort of standing there to be the thing that people can regroup to. That's typically what it's used for. You could just choose a model. I would choose the bruiser or the medic because those are the models that don't super matter for your game plan for the rest of the turn. And so you can sort of place them in positions where you know a good regroup can happen. And then, and it's really important because it helps you bring back your melter gunner. It helps bring back a trooper that has maybe gone too far. It helps bring back just pieces that you don't want to be in the open. And you might be like, oh, what if it's only one piece? Well, that's great because we have so much CP. Because of Siege Warfare, we have, I think, over the course of the game, because you are only maybe going to do in-life shame, you're going to have, like, I've ended games with, like, 4 CP in the bank just because... I don't really care about. Yeah, I don't.
You've already got your rerolls.
Yeah, it's like whatever. So like regroup is just it's just you can just do it whenever, and be happy. Just be happy that that's another tool in your kit to move people around. And that's why I was saying, like with the medic and stuff, it doesn't really matter where he ends, because let's say like you shot with one guy, but the other guy is safe, and now that guy's exposed. You can regroup the medic 3 inches closer to make sure he's safe. Right. Let's say you had relayed orders with the Vox operator, and he's way in the back now, and he's outside of 6. You can regroup him closer, just making sure someone's within 5, so that he's within 3 of your Watchmaster to relay orders again. Regroup is sort of like, it's sort of like if people sort of remember last edition, it's called Into the Breach, where they all moved forward. It's the same idea. It's just a little bit more difficult. I will say again, this is another part of the kit that's really hard to grasp. Played the team, because it's going to be like, I see no good regroup targets. It's really up to your imagination how it's used, but it's really good. Just, and I will say there's a little tech because it has a support tag. You can bring the comms thing,
comms array or something. Comms
array or something like that, which increases the range. It increases it by 3. So the initial guy has to be within 8 inches of that guy. I wouldn't bring it just strictly on the fact that you typically don't need 8 inches to pull back that many guys. But, I've seen it work and I've seen it happen. I personally don't like it because I typically try to keep a tight game. But if you're new, maybe it will help. I'm not going to say it's not good. But it's not what I would choose. And now we're going to get to the last one where I think it's really complicated. Clear the line. Now you're going to ask, Galas, you're going to be like, why would you bring Clear the Line? These guys have terrible melee. Exactly the reason you bring Clear the Line. Yeah. So the reason you bring Clear the Line on this team is because we are so bad at melee. People will charge us, and wound math is something I know is a complicated thing, but wound math is basically saying, I'm going to charge this guy, I'm not going to take any damage. I will be at 14 health if this is a Marine, for example. If you run anything in a calculator, KT Calc, you're going to see that at different wound breakpoints, you have a higher chance of killing stuff, right? Yep. Clear the Line allows you to always guarantee that you're doing 2 or 3 damage, which is a really good thing, because then it allows your plasma gunner, right, from killing a Marine that's at 14 wounds, which is like maybe a 30% chance. If you deal 2 damage, that chance jumps up about 25%. Right. Now you have a 50% chance. And that's a huge deal, right? For 1 CP, you're taking any guy on your team, and if they charge him, you increase your chances by 2% or like 25%. That's a huge buff. So Clear the Line, now also having severe, is like 3 damage. It boosts another 10%. So now you have a 60% chance with your plasma. Sure. That's the reason you take Clear the Line into teams that you know are going to run into you, because it's hoping to get 2 hits so you can deal some damage. That is really strong into any team. If they run into you, that's an old strategic thing you did in last edition. But in this edition, it's really important because so many things have more wounds, elites. Yeah. So do Clear the Line if you feel like your opponent is going to run in to charge you. Increases your chances really high. So it's for a CP, especially because you have so much CP, like we said earlier. Just pop it. It's fine. It's not going to be that big of a deal if it doesn't work or not work, because the only other option you're going to have to use your CP on is in-life shame. And then we're going to talk about the last really complicated thing, in-death atonement. Those are the only 2 other things you're going to be spending on. So you're going to spend it on regroup, Clear the Line, In Life Shame, In Death Atonement. Those are typically the ones you're going to use it on. There are chances you might use it for Inspirational Leadership or Combined Arms. I've never done either. I feel, so just to speak on them very briefly, Inspirational Leadership is an ability where it's either your Confidant or your Watchmaster, and then it can, before it activates, you can issue a Guardsman order from 6 inches from them. So, but it replaces the current guard order. So let's say you had move, move, move on them. It replaces it into take aim or fix bayonets, whatever. I don't like it. It used to stack in last edition. This edition, it doesn't stack. Don't do it. Most of the time, you should already have relayed the order you want, and In Life Shame covers the bases for the order that you didn't have because it gives you all of them. Combined Arms is the ploy that is a firefight ploy where you, when you shoot, have already shot someone and you shoot with another model, it gets relentless. It's a very niche thing because I don't think I've ever really not rolled at least 2 or 3 hits. And if the initial target has already been shot by something, typically I'm not having to reroll all my dice again. On the off chance that you have to, it's good, but keep it in mind. I know people swear by it. I know a lot of people say I've used it a lot. I have never used it ever. Actually, I don't think I've used it once. Because ceaseless and accurate, it's just really accurate. It always gets me hits that I never really feel like I need it. So keep that in mind. And then we're going to get to the last firefight ploy, which is In Death Atonement. This is also one of the reasons why people think this team fell from grace, because it used to be really, really good. It's now very sadly mediocre. So before, to speak on it, In Death Atonement was basically a ploy that when one of your vet guards that was readied had died, on their if you had used them in their next activation, they then die after. This edition, it's immediately. So you don't get an activation to use them and to do their thing. They just do one action immediately. Now, there's a lot of caveats to that. In Death Atonement in last edition, because you got to activate them, if they were in Conceal, you were able to flip the order to engage. This edition, because you can't do that, they have to do an immediate action. Unless they have a silent profile gun, you won't be able to shoot with them. It's really, really hard to get In Death Atonement off on the pure fact to shoot back, unless, for example, you have a Melta-Gunner that has run up the board and now has shot. So it's not great anymore. It's great for maybe capping a point. Maybe it's good for... I don't know. It's really hard for me to be like, this is a great ploy again. It's very niche situations. There's some tech where on guard, if your opponent shoots you, for example, and you die during your activation, you are still considered ready. So you can do In Death Atonement after the guard shot had killed you, and you can shoot back because hopefully you're engaged. That has come up against some of my elite players I've played against. And it's a good like safety net for Into the Dark. But beyond that, it's very hard to be like, yeah, this is as good as it used to be. So sure. Just keep it in mind. I mean, everything in your toolbox can be used. It's not like Pathfinders where everything is awful. So you have some play with it. It's just, remember, it's really niche. It will come up. I think In Death Atonement has come up, I think, about 4 to 5 to 6 games for me. After the GT, I played them a little bit more. But over a course of 20 games, that's about maybe about, I don't know, 10% of my games, maybe 20% of my games. So it's not like, it's not going to come up every time, but just keep it in mind, because sometimes you do want to tap the point. Sometimes there's a point where, they charged you and you're like, okay, now I'm going to tap the point because you're thinking about gas bombardment and all that other stuff. So, just that's, I think that's all the firefight and strategic gambits, strategic ploys.
Okay. I mean, there are more you didn't mention, but inspirational leadership, combined arms. You haven't mentioned take cover, but I assume that's because you don't use them.
Don't take cover. Don't do any. This is horde advice. There's a lot of these everywhere. Pathfinders have them, I think.
Yeah.
Do not take cover. It is bait. You will waste CP. This is the only time I will say you are going to waste CP. Saving on 4s only increases your chances of living on a 7 wound body I think it's about 5%. And that's not factoring AP or anything else. It's really bad. Do not do it.
Out of curiosity, total random one. Take cover gives you +1 to your armor save. If it was you can retain 1, does that change your mindset? Or it's like, no, you're a horde team, just die?
I think I would take it then. I think that's actually really strong. Yeah.
Okay.
If it said, hey, if you get an extra cover save or something, I would take that in a heartbeat. Because basically then I think a crack grenade can't kill you, and that's really strong. Unless they roll 4 hits, and typically a crack grenade in this edition is only rolling 3. So yes, I would definitely maybe take it. Oh, you know what? Yeah, I'm talking about crack grenade launcher. Can't do a crack grenade saturate because of saturate.
Yes,
I think in some circumstances, take cover if it was like that, it would be good. But otherwise, don't do it.
Cool. Good to know. Just rip that page out of the app. Yeah, excellent.
Don't take hand axes. Don't take crook comm beads for equipment. Speak on hand axes just a little bit. The math doesn't change if you hit them for 3 or 2 damage. The math is about the same for the increased percentage to kill.
Right.
At 4 damage, it does change quite a bit. However, I'm not going to take 1 equipment piece for that. It's just not in my playstyle. Comm beads, I know a lot of people take it because they use the Watchmaster really aggressively, move up, and they can never really get the Vox operator back in position. So they relay order to that guy, and then he relays orders again. I think if you're taking that for that specific play, I don't think that's good enough to waste your equipment slot on, because there are just so many other better equipments. So I never take it. Just keep your Vox operator. If that's the one aura, I know I have missed it in stuff like that, but if that's the one aura you're really thinking about, try to keep your Vox operator within 6 of your Watchmaster until about TP3, because TP3 you're going to lose all your models most of the time. Most of your models by then have died, at least your important models, so it doesn't really matter if they have take aim or not. Typically most of the time spread so thin or stuff like that that it doesn't really come up anymore. So I wouldn't worry past TP3 if you've used your Watchmaster, but typically your Watchmaster has already by the start of TP3 has run in and try to smack something with a power weapon. So
and I guess unless you have more, I do have a kind of a final question that I think some people might be in my particular situation thinking. But is there any kind of more specific Vet Guard strats that we need to know?
I think the big one is just, this is more of a fundamental thing.
Yeah.
When you're playing horde teams in this edition, last edition you were trying to trade for points. In this edition, you should shift your mindset to, how do I hold as much space as possible so that the elite player can't move into it? That's how horde players should be playing now, I think. As long as you're holding space and threatening the elite player before they move into that space, you more than less will make the elite player very scared. That's just sort of my general advice for playing this team and any team that's not an elite, or I should say a horde team. Really, it's different for Corsairs, but yeah, if you're just playing this team for the first time and you're like learning how to play the game, my best advice is just to be like, okay, Sammy said to hold the space. If my elite player moves in, then I punish him. If he doesn't move in, I just wait. That's it. That's all you need to do, because eventually the elite player will come to you. I promise you they will, because if they don't, they're going to lose out on crit up. And then you're winning the game. And then no one's dead, and you're just sitting there being happy. So, yeah, that's about it.
Okay, well, honestly, that was basically an answer to what I was about to say. I was about to say that when I play, I like to just brain dead. I would just want to full send, run everybody forwards, right? Because that's easy, it's fun, I don't have to think, and if I lose, who cares? Because I got to roll a bunch of dice. Yes. However, you're saying that maybe that's not the horde play.
Unfortunately, no. Which is why I think the team is suffering.
Sure.
I love elites. I will say first off, I love legionaries. I love legionaries from last edition. I loved running in and killing 2 guys and going like, yeah, my anointed is in there. This edition, and usually you would lose as an elite player, because then the horde player would have more points and stuff like that. This edition, you can't do that with the horde team anymore. In last edition, you could because you had more power. This edition, you just can't. It's just sadly the case, and you just have to sit there and be like, I'm playing. If anyone knows this reference, you're playing the blue player in Magic. You are the, haha, you can't do that anymore. You're not playing the red. You're not playing even the green. You're playing pure control. That is what you're trying to do. You're trying to minimize your losses by maximizing their losses, but at the same time, not letting them play the game. It's not fun. I'm gonna be real. This team is really not like, yeah, I'm gonna run in and kill stuff all the time. It's just you're trying to be more strategic. It's unfortunately.
Okay. All right. So there we go. Final say, Vet Guard isn't fun.
Yes, it's not fun.
Good. Okay.
It hurts my brain, but you know what? It's fun when you win. I mean, that's part of it. So that's why I play it.
Okay. Excellent. Okay. Well, I think that it pretty much caps up how to play Vet Guard. Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Sammy. This has been really cool, and hopefully we can do something similar again.
Of course. Hope to see you guys.